Speaking of Disney, the Disney people, they're back at it again. They got more stuff. They really think it's important that your 5-year-old have a lot of gender talk and genitals, and it's very important. If you can't, because, the current generation, what do we call this current generation? Generation LGBTQ QAnon, I think. And so LGBT QAnon is because they got these conspiracy theories all over the place, and don't say gay and all this stuff. A lot of crazy stuff. But now it turns out a Disney executive has a child who says that, and I think the child is, this Disney executive, I think, has 2 children. The children are non-binary or fluid or gender non-conforming or something like that.
I'm here as a mother of 2 queer children, actually. One transgender child and one pansexual child.
Well, I'm here to take parenting advice from you, and maybe you should have a position of great power and authority to influence a great and God-fearing nation. And reminds me of that line from broadcast news, what is Satan? Just lower our standards a little bit. So that's good. I'm happy for you. I'm proud. I'm proud for you. And that's wonderful. But it goes on from there, and there is some pretty interesting. She has one of her children. I don't know how to describe he, she, like that, based on what I've heard. The children, the child. But child says that the current generation, the new generation, is 30 to 40%. What was the term used? Queerer. Queerer, is that the correct terminology? Because it changes from hour to hour, and what you say yesterday would be bigoted today, and vice versa, according to, the mob in the street.
As my son texted me this morning, Gen Z is 30 to 40% queerer than the other generation's mom. So Disney better get with it.
Yeah, 30 to 40%. So you better get with it, because the next generation is going to be 100% queerer. So I remember just a few years ago, queer was a slur, and then it was adopted, and now it's not only okay, it's better than anything. It's better than peanut butter. It's really good. So that's Disney. Disney is coming for your children. And in Florida, the Democrats apparently want to come for your children when they're 5 years old. How old are you in kindergarten, Michael? 4. 4 years old. Sorry, they want to come after your children when they're 4 years old. And in New Jersey, they're stepping things up too, because they've got, I don't know, they're going to have charts or what. You're going to have to identify little teeny tiny children, male and female genitals, and then you're going to talk about how these might not really belong to you, but to somebody else. Something like that. So that's New Jersey, because, what do we call them? Democrats. Democrats and gender. It's kind of a weird place they've found themselves in, but they'd like us to join them. That's for sure. Pretty amazing times we're in. I do want to get into the George Orwell, 1945, every joke is a tiny revolution, and how in the Soviet Union, people were punished for telling jokes about the regime, the Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia at the time, and so on. You're punished if you told jokes about the regime, because it wasn't allowed because of authoritarianism. And fascism is a coalition between corporate entities and the party. Keep that in mind, too, because that's going to come in handy in the next 20 years or so, in the next couple of hours, perhaps, as well. We are at 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. Isn't that amazing? We got, again, it's Friday. It's Friday here in the radio business, which is a danger zone. But that's okay. Everything will be fine. The New York Times with a piece yesterday by David Leonhardt. David Leonhardt is that's kind of like Lionheart, but he's a squirrel. He's a squirrel. Good morning. Say today we look at the Putin wing of the Republican Party. This is the New York Times, the Putin wing and the Republican Party. And they've got a picture of the silhouettes of Donald John Trump and Vlad the Impaler Putin. And Putin and Donald Trump, the caption says, "Their man in Moscow." And the New York Times is arguing that the Republican Party is in bed with Putin. This is McCarthyism on LSD. And they are the McCarthyist party. They're accusing everybody, including their own Tulsi Gabbard, now former Democrat congresswoman from Hawaii, the state of Hawaii, who they have accused, Hillary Clinton accused of being a Russian agent, a Russian operative. And Jill Stein of the Green Party, they accused her of being a Russian agent. And then they accused Donald Trump of being a Russian agent. And they accused Tucker Carlson of being a Russian agent. If this isn't McCarthyism in the modern age, I don't know what it is. But I do know what it is, and it is McCarthyism in the modern age. Donald Trump turned Vladimir Putin into a popular figure among a significant segment of Republican voters. That's the first sentence in the story in the New York Times. I'm sorry, what? Is that what happened there? There's, as a candidate, president and ex-president, Trump has repeatedly praised Putin, calling him, quote, strong, end quote. I'd say he is. And quote, savvy, end quote. See, now they're not doing whole sentences. They're just doing single words and quotation marks. That's the mark of a charlatan. And this guy is just such a charlatan. And, quote, genius, end quote. I don't know if he called him that, but President Trump uses a lot of words sometimes. Trump has also echoed Putin's ideology by harshly criticizing NATO. Now, if you're a really stupid person, this might work on you. President Trump, his harsh criticism of NATO included, you may remember going over to NATO and saying, you guys should not be energy dependent on Putin, for natural gas and for oil, to stay warm in the wintertime, to run your cars and your buses. You shouldn't be so dependent on Putin. That was one of his harsh criticisms of NATO. Seems like a, pretty good suggestion at this point, doesn't it? And then, so you have Donald John Trump right there talking to the Germans, who we defeated twice and then defended for 3/4 of a century. And then they start buying all their stuff from Putin, which doesn't seem like a good idea strategically thinking. President Trump pointed this out to the Germans and other NATO members.
So we're supposed to protect you against Russia, but they're paying billions of dollars to Russia, and I think that's very inappropriate. And the former chancellor of Germany is the head of the pipeline company that's supplying the gas. Ultimately, Germany will have almost 70% of their country controlled by Russia with natural gas. So you tell me, is that appropriate? I mean, I've been complaining about this from the time I got in. It should have never been allowed to have happened.
That's a fact. Now, he's obviously 100% right, saw the situation very clearly. He saw the future, and he saw the present, which is all you had to do at the time. But the New York Times is now selling this as a harsh criticism of NATO. That's what these pimps at the New York Times, and David Leonhardt in particular, are typing on behalf of the international left, the Davos crowd. President Trump said it's inappropriate. Well, indeed, he was correct about that, wasn't he? Seems to have borne itself out. And then he suggested, here's something really crazy, that our so-called NATO allies, our so-called NATO partners, had committed under the North Atlantic Treaty to contribute to the common defense 2% of their gross domestic product. We contribute about 4% of our much, much larger gross domestic product. Huge gobs of money from Americans in the Midwest, getting up before the sun and coming home after the sun, working hard all day long so we can pay into the common defense and defend Germany.